Welcome to another Wargame review from theplayersaid.com. My name's Alexander.
And I'm Grant.
And today, we're taking a look at GMT's Virgin Queen. This is a game that we bought...
Like a year ago.
It was 2 years ago.
Oh, man.
Yeah. Well, I bought this a couple of years ago because...
We like Here I Stand a lot.
Yeah, we played Here I Stand. I love it. It's one of my probably all-time favorite war games.
It's fantastic.
Love the theme, love the period, love what you do, the asymmetry, so much
mechanics
to it.
Yeah, just fantastic.
Virgin Queen is the sequel to that game. It is a sequel both chronologically, is very much just after that, and it is also a sequel in the sense that there's some of the like the core mechanisms and the way that some of the things work. But they've added a lot of different pieces, changed some things, and the global situation is very, very different. The political situation different.
Yeah.
The religious situation very different. And so whilst you might see some of the same factions with the same colors, and some of the characters from that late game you'll recognize from the early game in this one,
Yep.
how things play out is wildly different and a very different game. In the things that kind of happen, at least to an extent, right?
Yeah.
You know.
Well, and it's because it's not just the focus on the game board. There's 4 of these cards over here that are off camera that you can't necessarily see.
Yeah.
That all have different elements. Marriages, which is a big part of this.
Yes, a big part of this. So you have, each year you'll get a new set of
1 or 2 guys, or a girl and a woman and a man generally, and
there's little courtiers, and it's got your faction on it, and then they have like some ability or something that happens. And during diplomacy, not only are you negotiating all the kind of things you were doing before, but also you're trying to arrange marriages. Mm-hmm. You do a marriage with a friend, mutually you get these guys together, someone's going to benefit from the texts. And then later on, if the marriage goes through, you roll on a dice for that couple, and you may get some nice bonus.
The higher you roll, the better, and those bonuses, are in the form of an extra card or potentially victory points.
I got some CP that you could immediately spend on a diplomatic action.
Yep.
I think you get victory points in it. I got 2 victory points from one of my weddings.
You rolled really well.
Yeah,
which was awesome
because you get some modifiers, and we rolled 12.
We rolled a 12, and you had like a +3.
And we both sets of people who were in that got a 2 victory point count.
Yeah, so everybody was cheering because it was so tense and fun.
And there's a whole thing where there's scientists and artists of different types.
I really liked that part.
And you invest CP to patronize them.
Yep.
And so you become
not make fun of them, but use their talents.
That's patronizing.
I know, but we were joking.
But yeah, you put them up on a track, and again at the end, it's kind of like when you resolve your colonies and things like that, right? At the end, you do these marriages, you do these. You roll 2d6, you add their modifier plus a modifier based on how many CP you invested into them.
Yep.
And for the scientists, there's VPs available. Or there's some special technologies available.
Which are very cool.
Pretty cool.
Yep. And different technologies, from things like better bonuses on circumnavigation, or better bonuses on defending during sieges.
Yeah, or a capacity to build more forts than you normally can.
Very cool.
Really neat things. And the artists provide you with a ton of victory points.
I rolled a 12 on mine.
Yeah.
And ultimately, I think I got 3 victory points because I had an architect.
Yes, I think that only do victory points though. But but there's more of them available as well. Is the other aspect there?
That seemed like that was the one part that I felt like it was a sideshow. But I'll be honest, it was pretty fun and it was pretty tense.
But for you, it may have been a sideshow because you played England. You had a lot of campaigning and stuff to do.
Yeah,
I played as the Holy Roman Empire, where I've got some campaigning to do.
Yeah.
But one of my home cards patronizes really well.
Yeah.
So I'm kind of tossing that in with the rounds that I can to give myself a really good roll to get some extra little bonus VPs. It reminds me a little bit of those French chateaus from the other game. Almost.
Yes.
Like you play it and you get a VP.
Yep.
Basically.
Yep.
That felt a little bit like that. And then there's.
Well, you track the Holy War, right? The Protestant versus Catholic. You're tracking that, and
that's one of the things that's very different in this game.
Yes.
In the old one, it was here's my Protestant faction and my Papacy faction.
Fighting each other.
And it was a little bit crunchy. You commit someone, you roll a bunch of dice opposed. This one, they've streamlined that. You take a conversion action, you roll dice based on CP that you've invested into that, and you can flip anyone's. You don't have to kind of designate beforehand. But conversely, it's easier to take them away. You don't have all these extra modifiers. And so that goes a lot quicker, and there's a bit more back and forth at times. But then there's also full-blown these rebellions and things like that that you can do. But as such, there's a track for all the Protestant bases and a number of factions. So I think the Protestants, the Spanish, the English,
the HRE,
and the Holy Roman Empire. There's a kind of a pendulum. If there's a ton of Catholic spaces, the Spanish are going to score a lot of points.
If it swings toward Protestantism,
Protestants score a lot of points.
English
gets a few points.
Yep.
And one of the cool things about the Holy Roman Empire is, at the beginning of the game, I got to gamble. I get to write down whether I think it's going to be heavily Protestant, heavily Catholic, or somewhere in between. I literally write that down on a piece of paper.
Yeah.
And so, depending on how that goes, I have X amount of points that I can say, I win because I have that at the end of the game, which was fun. Yeah. And there's some nuance to that. You can take a safe bet that it'll be balanced. Most likely it will be. You only get 5 VPs. Right. If you gamble one way or the other, you can get up to 7.
So it can be a lot.
But it's much harder to do that. Someone else is going to get a lot of points as well. Yeah. And you got to balance that because the Protestants can auto-win very quickly from the point at which I had lots of victory points. So the religious war, very different.
Very different, but it has some of the same mechanics. It doesn't have debates. It doesn't have some of those or translations.
Yeah.
But it's still conversions and going back and forth.
I'd almost say it's a kind of like a step back, and you lose the focus of the individual members of the Reformation and things like that. And it's much more like
the countries are almost
the furore of people doing that and the rebellions and things like that. It's less. Here's my one debater that I'm putting in. Yeah. He's got a name and a bonus.
Yeah.
You don't have that. As such, it goes a bit quicker as well.
But it's interesting because each country really has an ability. Some, they're a little bit different. For instance, the Spanish have their, I can't remember what it was called, but in essence it was take out heresy, right?
Oh yeah,
heresy
the suppress heresy.
Protestantism.
Yes.
And I had kind of a similar thing, and it was to go more towards Protestantism. I didn't want to become Catholic as England. It hurt me because it set me up for the Gunpowder Rebellion and some other negative effects. But very neat part. It's just very different. I liked it. I liked that part. Thought it was interesting.
But with all that said, this game gives you a similar experience.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is you get the interpersonal negotiation and diplomacy. You get the same incredible tension as you spread out and get your keys, and it is everyone's so fragile in doing that because the further you spread out from your home,
it's
the
more
difficult
difficult
to reinforce and keep that stuff. All of that stuff's kept over. This one is incredibly rich with all those extra other bits and pieces that you could do.
The only comment, I agree with you. I do like those other bits and pieces. It does feel different than Here I Stand because it almost distracts you a little bit. One of the guys that played with us, Nate, he made that comment where he felt like he was too focused on other things and should have been more focused on the major parts.
Yeah.
Which I understand that, and I would agree to that in some respect.
But that's also part of these games, though, right? It's can I keep myself on track and not get distracted by the shiny objects, the events on the cards.
Yeah.
Because in these games, it's always, if you have a plan and you spend your CP, you'll be able to do what you had planned of doing.
Yeah.
Instead of like, oh, I've got this opportune event which might screw you over, but it doesn't actually help me do the thing that I was trying to do, and it's easier to get distracted in this one.
Yeah,
That's a feature of the game, I think. And
we haven't really talked a whole lot about it because we're assuming in some ways you understand what Here I Stand is.
Yeah.
But it's a card-driven war game. Each side, all of the 6 different factions,
and I would basically only ever play the 6-player.
Yeah, I mean. Yeah, there's a 2-player scenario, but we're not even sure exactly what it was.
There's a 4-player tournament version,
which cuts out the Ottomans.
and the Holy Roman Empire.
Oh, okay.
It's only this, which would probably be
Spain,
serviceable.
France.
It'd probably be fine.
Yeah.
But
Protestants and then England.
If you can get the 6 players,
it's a great experience.
These games are just they're mouth-watering.
Well, they're just so. And I made this comment when we were playing. It's supremely interesting.
Yeah. Yes.
It kept. We played for 12 hours today. Right. We got to the 5th turn, and it was 12 hours, man.
Yeah.
And I know many of you are like, "What the?" But
yeah, none of us had played this before. Well, yeah, none of
we
us
hadn't
had actually
played this game. Yeah. So we were learning, so I think it took a little longer than it probably would have. But what I'm saying is...
it's just a long game. Yeah.
But for a 12-hour game, to keep me engaged, interested, I'm exhausted.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm hot and sweaty. I'm trembling a little bit because it was great. There was so much... I don't know. I really enjoyed so many elements of this. I prefer Here I Stand, though. I think I do.
Why? Let's put that out.
I think I enjoy it because I really like the Holy War and how that plays out. This is just very different in that respect.
Yes, it is.
I also, while I really liked the sideshow stuff, I feel like it's more crunchy. There's a lot more to remember. Yes. I feel like from time to time we were, I forgot that.
But this game has a lot more exceptions and things like that. So I would agree with that instance.
But I still would play this. I think I prefer Here I Stand. But I really like this.
I like Here I Stand because it's the Wars of the Reformation. That theme is fascinating. This is a little bit later on from that, and it feels like a continuation of that.
It does.
In a way.
Yeah.
But I think, mechanically, the actual religious execution here is simpler. It's a bit easier.
It is.
And you don't have the problem...
As many choices.
The problem with Here I Stand is sometimes it feels like the papacy and the Protestants are playing their own little mini-game.
Agree. Right? A game within that game.
And that's what some people say, and they're like, it can be a little bit two-dimensional for them. Mm-hmm. Sure. This one, the Protestant faction... is a lot more dynamic. Mm-hmm. Has 2 big, fairly reasonable armies that they control within that. So I think that's I like that they've no one's going to feel like they don't have anything to do. I feel.
Agree.
But maybe I think Here I Stand ekes it out because I think the themes. Well, I don't know.
And I also believe that we're more familiar with Here I Stand. We've played it more. This was our first attempt at this game. And really,
it was excellent.
It was excellent.
It so much.
And we had a great group of guys.
Yeah.
There were some tensions. There were some disputations from time to time about rules, about what's going on. Sometimes tempers flared a little bit, but that's okay.
Yeah,
because you knew everybody was engaged.
But any game where it's multiple players and you have straight up diplomacy where you're lying to each other probably.
Yes.
Check your feelings.
Yep.
But there are times where you're going to do something and it feels nasty to someone.
It does. There's a lot of that backstabbing.
And some of that, comes from a card play that you can feel I'm totally out of control and I just got hosed after I put in a lot of work for things.
Yeah.
But it's just some of those things are elements of the game, and you might get heated and just take a little breather. But...
Well, and I don't know that it was, when I say heated or emotional, I don't know that anybody was really mad at everybody. We were so into it.
And that's why I love these games. I love the feelings that they give me.
Yes,
I
agree.
love games with diplomacy in them and conflict and the capacity to make alliances and switch allegiances because it gives you feelings that make you... I don't know. They're stimulating. They're interesting. What you're playing out is fun. And how do you figure out the puzzle of I got to leave enough here to not die, but I still have to go and do that. Or love it.
I think there's also so many choices about how you go about attacking things. Sieging, assaulting, how I use my navy, how you move around, and I'm talking about that combat side.
Yeah,
and it's so interesting in that respect. I also love the cards. I mean, the cards are so amazing. Some of the events are really brutal. I had 3 Scottish rebellions in 5 turns.
Yeah, that was...
It's devastating.
Yeah.
It really killed what I was trying to do. In fact, I was literally a hair's breadth from winning twice. I think you were close to winning at one point.
Yeah,
it's just...
I was clawing my way back in.
I feel like it's up and down, back and forth, and the worst position is to be almost near victory, because then everybody kind of dogpiles you.
Well,
but that's cool.
In this 6-player game, 5 of the 6 players were very close to winning.
I agree.
And had a solid lead at
There was
point.
one, France, who really was never... Because of some early choices, because of some...
But the French player enabled everyone else to have nearly clutched victory.
I agree.
So
I agree.
It was brutal.
Yeah. But I would play this again tomorrow. If we had the time to be here, I would play it again tomorrow. I would learn a lot. I'd be better at it. And I think I would even love it more. But yeah, here I stand in this. They're both great games.
Yes.
Both great games.
Yeah. What I'll do is I'll show you the map, and then we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So, here's a look at the board, and I know traditionally there's a lot more on it. Like, it'll be fully set up just after we have played a game. In this instance, we were playing at a different location, and so we had to pack everything up and move it here, and setting this up is pretty involved. And there's plenty of pictures and stuff you can see for that. What I want to show you more is some of the mechanics and where things are different versus Here I Stand, or if you've not played either, what this game looks like. So, this is a game that does need a lot of space, and it does need more space than Here I Stand, because you have this regular 22 by 34 map, but every player has one of these cards. So there's one for England, one for France, the Holy Roman Empire is a player up here. We have a Protestant player. The Protestant player plays the Protestant Dutch and the Huguenot as well. And then there's the Ottomans in green down here. And then there's Spain, which it's very interesting. Spain have, obviously Spain control all of the Netherlands to start with, and then a significant portion of Italy as well. So those are the factions. So everyone's got one of those. But in this game, you'll also have a card out. And this is your victory point track. It's not printed on the board on this one. But there's also a number of tables on here, as well as an eligibility level. So in this game, you have courtiers, and you have to get them married. And if you do, you get nice, cool bonuses and things like that. There's just some extra chrome for some of the more important events, with the rulers during these times. So we'll kind of go through how that works, but you'll have this set up, and this track will be filled with little counters that represent, there's anywhere from like 5 to 7 or 8 of these on here, and your eligibility goes down as you kind of age out of this, so to speak. So you have to have that. Then you also have to have space for this card, which this is a lot of new stuff on here. So this is the Patronage Chart, and it's divided into basically 2 sections. You have all the scientists here and the artists here, and what you have is an opportunity to invest in either artists or scientists. And if you invest CP into them, you get a die roll plus a modifier for the CP you invested, and each one has their own modifier as well for how good they are, basically. And you can get rewards for those. It's a similar concept to things like the colonies and exploring a new world. The colonies, you roll those 2 dice, and do you get a card? Do you get a bonus victory point, or does it get destroyed? This is a similar kind of concept. You invest in these guys, you roll. Do you get 1 VP, 2 VPs, or 3 VPs? Do they run away and you get nothing and they steal your money, basically? Or is it kind of no effect and they just get cycled back into the pool and you can try again next time? The scientist is a little bit more interesting. There's fewer victory point rewards available. However, there's these science bonuses. And, where did I put those? I don't know if, it's kind of hard to see, but there's a pool of these science tokens, and the science tokens have technologies on them, or little scientific breakthroughs, so to speak. And some of these are, it changes the rules of the game, basically. So this, and there's like a pool of them, and they're all available to start with. You choose. So this one's got you get a dry dock. And the dry dock says, naval losses, immediately return to force pool. Normally, naval losses go into the turn track, and you have to be able to buy them next turn. However, if you had the dry dock technology, they go into your force pool, you could buy them immediately on your next turn. Like your next impulse, not your next turn. And so that's really important for things like, the Corsairs. If the Ottomans are going around doing piracy, you're losing ships, trying to combat that. They can be really powerful to just churn out ships to combat that kind of thing. So you get little the science technologies, little rule-breaking additions and bonuses. And those things are very, very cool. One of them gives you a capacity to build 2 fortresses a turn instead of 1. So if you want to go heavy on that, that's kind of the Spaniards need that for defending against piracy here and here. That's something that our player invested in during their turn. So that's one of the other neat little bits. It's not just victory points. You can get other cool technologies. It's more victory points for the artists, but there's a larger available pool of victory points. The scientists have it's a smaller number of victory points, but they have access to the cool bonuses too. So this is a way to pick up points to win, especially if you have a couple extra CP. Like, oh yeah, I'll invest in one of these guys. But again, table space. You got to have this out. It's very, very cool. The other aspect is the diplomacy, the diplomatic influence table. Again, this is very different from Here I Stand with regards to how the minor powers work in this one. So, in a 6-player game, you're going to be you're going to use this. In a 4-player game, you don't. The Ottomans and the Holy Roman Empire are kind of inactive little minor powers, and they can be influenced differently. But in the 6-player game, you've got the Papacy, Venice, Scotland, Ireland, and Portugal, and Spain is yellow, the Protestants are orange, Ottomans are green, and England is red. They start off with a natural kind of bonus in those diplomatic levels, influence levels. What you do is, whenever a card event triggers a Papacy activation or an Irish activation, what you do is each eligible power, so in this instance, Spain, France, Holy Roman Empire, and England, gets to roll a d6. And whoever rolls highest, that's whose side Ireland would activate and join. So that's important because, A, you don't really know when that's going to happen. It's random when that's going to show up, because you don't know when the card's going to come up, and even if the card is in someone's hand, they might not play it for the event, for example. Or sometimes there wasn't much movement on this, but if you hold a card, and you're like, if you hold the Scotland card, you're like, yes, I want to get Scotland on my side, and you start investing heavily in this to get these bonuses, everyone else is going to see that you've got that and know you're probably holding that card, and they're going to jump on it and start doing that. Or you might just kind of, if you've got extra CP, who's got that? You might toss in a couple just to hedge your bets in case someone plays it. But it's different. Yeah, it activates. These are different from Here I Stand, and this was really neat because do you put in a spare CP or 2 just to have done it, or do you not bother and just kind of roll with it and it's kind of random? But for example, in our game we had the Papacy activated once and Scotland activated 3 times. No, none of these other ones activated. So, how those come up and that it is random. So there's an element of, do I bother with this or do I risk it? How do I plan for that kind of thing? And these can make some real big changes and differences in the game as well. So but table space. You got to have this one out. And the last thing that you have to have out. This is the diplomatic status chart. You'll recognize this from Here I Stand. This is who's at war, who's not at war, basically. And then you got the little impulse denotation as well. But we also have here This is the religious war display, basically. So before, you would score victory points based on the number of the Protestant versus Catholic spaces. There was a track for that as well, but this one, there's a larger victory point spread for a larger amount of players, and this I really, really liked, because the Spaniards, if everyone's Catholic, are going to get 7 victory points if the Protestant space marker is on 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, or 14. If the Protestants control 45 or more spaces, the Spaniards are getting 0 points. And this is Protestant religious control, not political control. Those are two very different things. If it's somewhere in the middle, you'll get somewhere in the middle's victory points. And conversely, the Protestants will get no victory points if they don't have many spaces, and 7 if they have all the spaces. If the Protestants ever get 50 spaces, that's basically everything, they insta-win the game with a religious victory. England kind of wants to be Protestant, but doesn't care that much, right? They have 1, 2, or 3 victory points, as opposed to like the 7 that the major powers, the Protestants and Catholics, Spain, get. And then the coolest part, because I played them, obviously, is the Holy Roman Empire has 3 columns, and this is Catholic control, kind of a balanced control, and a Protestant control. And at the beginning of the game, the Holy Roman Empire literally writes down on a piece of paper which one of these they want to score. So if I want to score the Catholic side, because I think, the Spaniards, I think I'm going to do my best to keep it up here, I'm going to score up to 7 victory points. If I bank on the Protestants, I got to help the Protestant player get religious control, but not insta-win the game to get my 7 victory points. Or I could go for a more balanced thing, where this is much more likely for it to be somewhere in the middle, but at most I can get 4 victory points. It's not as powerful. So I get to kind of gamble where I think it's going to end up, and then that will inform how much I influence one way or the other. It was just a fun little extra bit. But the Holy Roman Empire, if you go hard on the Catholics, you can get a bunch of points, but Spain's also going to get a bunch of points as well. So it's very fun. That was a cool little thing. But again, it's space. This game takes up a lot of space. Now, like we said, it's a card-driven game. You got a deck of cards, very much like Here I Stand. It's what you are used to. Your cards have an event on them that you can play, or they have this CP value that you can play. Event, CP. They did change a couple bits and pieces in it. So the mandatory events, it used to be in Here I Stand, you had to play the mandatory event for the event. It was usually pretty harsh on the player who had to play it. But in this game, the rule is that you play the card because it's mandatory, but you also always get the 2 CP. Some of the mandatory events in the other game, it was like some you didn't get the CP value, but they made sure that you always get that. You do have your foreign war cards, things that you'll be used to. There's the response cards that you play in response to another card or action being taken. There's the battle cards, which can only be played in battle, the little combat cards. Those things you'll be used to. And again, you get a number of cards based on how many keys that you have out, plus any card bonus you might have from your leader. So the French start off with no extra cards, but they start with 4 cards because of how many of these square keys they have out on the board. The more keys that you are able to put out through conquering other territories, the more cards you'll be able to get. Although he says it takes a lot for the French to get any more cards. They have to put out, 3 more to get to 5 cards? But you also get more VPs, the more of these that you have out on the board. Conversely, the more keys that are taken away from you, these get covered back up, you lose victory points, you lose cards for your next turn as well. So you still have that same economy. I enjoy that very much. So again, just like the previous game, you have your very limited pool of units and the denominations thereof. So you want to be efficient with those, and you have your little leaders stacked on them, and the leader has a little yellow value. This is a 6. It tells you how many units they can carry with them. And then the 1 is they roll 1 extra die in combat. So they're moving around doing the fighting and the conquering. And everyone's got a bunch of different stacks. That's a big part of the game, is taking land so that you can put the keys out. That's the really important stuff. There'll be naval ships that roll a number of dice in either combat or piracy for the Ottomans, or you roll in like anti-piracy stuff if you're being attacked. And the other really neat bit is, and I'll grab them. This is one of the additions of these kind of courtiers. You get to try to arrange marriages for sometimes it's your leaders that are printed on your card. For example, we got Elizabeth I. She can get married in this game, and there are consequences for having done that. But sometimes it's just guys. Sometimes it's dudes that will come up as military leaders. Sometimes it's just other courtiers, like Anna of Saxony, for example. And what you're going to do during the diplomacy phase, as well as making alliances, declaring war, exchanging or giving a card, or receiving some mercenaries, that kind of stuff that you're used to, what you're doing is, this Spaniard has Don Carlos, and I'm the Holy Roman Emperor, I've got Anna of Saxony. I might say to the Spaniard, hey, let's try to wed these two, because then we'll get to roll on the wedding table. So if I've got these two, must reroll highest. Okay, well, he's pretty bad, so he might not want to do that. So if we marry these two, we get to roll on the table. Cool. But they also have these little abilities in them as well. And so this one, it says he must reroll the highest marriage result die. So he's actually not very good. But Anna of Saxony says husband's power gets +1 card next turn. So when these two get married, Spain's going to draw another card on the next turn. And what happens is, during diplomacy, you put all these pairs together, and you kind of pair them off, get them engaged. You do all of your actions, play all your cards, play the game, play the whole turn. And this is after all of that, then you roll on these tables. And what's cool is, each of you rolls 1 die and adds your modifier to it as well. And this is based on their eligibility. So Don Carlos starts on 2, Anna of Saxony starts on 1. So Holy Roman Empire is going to roll 1 die and add 1. And you don't have to be quite so strict with it. I roll 1 die, it's a 1, and I add 1. That's pretty pathetic. Don Carlos rolls a 4 and adds 2, but he must re-roll the highest marriage result die, so we've got to re-roll this. Hey, it was even better. That's fantastic. So we've got 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 is what we rolled all together. And then you consult this little chart here, and on 10 and 11 it says, no issue, the couple struggle through miscarriages and the birth of sickly children who never lived to celebrate their first birthday. No royal heirs come from this match. No effect. 10's a fairly normal result, right? If you start rolling lower than that, each power gains a -1 card marker. Husbands get murdered. Real bad things happen if you roll really badly, but it's kind of hard to get bad. When you start getting up into the really good rolls, for example, if Elizabeth I was to get married early, she'd add +5 to her die. So it's really easy to start getting into the 14, 15 ranges, where you are awarded permanent marriage VP points, you can get card draws, and just really, really good stuff happens. And it's just a fun little extra part of it. But the nice thing with Elizabeth is sure, it would be appealing to roll on that and to get it, but she earns a victory point every turn that she's not married. She's the Virgin Queen, after all. So the gamble is how many turns do you keep doing that before, because you want to get her married before she dies. Because if she dies, you don't get any victory points, and then you can't get the cool roll on the table with her to get more victory points. So you go you're 3 turns in, that 4th turn, you're like, man, she might get assassinated, she might die of natural causes. So the English player's got to make some really interesting choices there about how and what they do with that. But the English home card if she arranges a marriage, the English home card says you can immediately break that off. So, and that's all. It's all part of the negotiation, right? Because her card would be placed on here with this. They're going to get married. It gets broken off in the middle of the action round. The husband gets to roll. The person who was jilted rolls on the jilted by Elizabeth table. On a 1 through 6, some good things happen. A 1 is no effect, which is kind of bad. Why that's important is to roll. When you're getting married to Elizabeth, you're getting a good bonus. You're getting a good roll. So the English player is not going to give her hand in marriage for free. You're going to be giving a card or giving up some mercenaries to do that. And so what this is if he does jilt you, it's not a completely empty diplomacy phase where they've totally hosed you. You get a roll, and you might get some good stuff to, spend some CP on diplomatic actions, which if you remember was this card. So you might get some good influence on an area, kind of for free. You might get a +1 card marker if you roll well. You might get 2 of those if you roll really, really well. So this is just a nice. I really liked this little extra sideshow. I really loved the patronage chart because you're picking guys and you put them up here. You roll on this chart, and again it's the same thing. Those little bits are such a nice little extra added chrome that I don't know. I enjoy that stuff. I thought it was fun. The other major new part in this game is they overhauled the religious war and how that works. It used to be that you would point to a space and then you would roll off based on a bunch of modifiers, your religiously aligned adjacent spaces, troops in there, modifiers from your debaters and things like that. They've streamlined that significantly and taken a bit more of a high-level approach. You chuck a number of dice equal to the CP that you spend, and you can just flip that many adjacent spaces. And if you roll a 6, you can do some extra stuff like flipping a space underneath some Catholic troops, for example. But it's just for the religious control. You do that back and forth with your preaching sermons and suppress heresy actions. But the big difference is that the Protestant player, they can initiate rebellions. So once you start getting some Protestant religious control, you're then going to spark a rebellion in that area to change to Protestant political control. And that's it, but it's similar in that they cut down how crunchy and crispy some of that stuff is, which I appreciated a lot. It meant that the Protestant player in a lot of France and Spain aren't playing this kind of separate holy war game from everyone else. This is just part of what they're doing within the whole game, which I thought was very, very neat. And then lastly, what we'll talk about is the piracy. So the piracy for the Ottomans is very similar to in Here I Stand. They're sending out their corsairs, they're rolling to try and attack ports, and they're trying to steal cards or victory points from whoever the target is, be it France, be it Spain. I think that's basically everyone who could be targeted. Not many other people. Yeah, I think that's it. But there's all of this kind of, this is called the global maps. There's one here and there's a little bit down here in the corner as well. You can see a lot of this is yellow. These are all the different colonies and conquests that you made in Here I Stand. They've now got colonies established, and all these dark red ones are part of Portugal. So what you're doing is you're sending your little sea captains, instead of stacking them with boats, which you can do, you can just put them out and they sail around in these areas and they do piracy down here, and it's not limited to the Ottomans. So you get the English are going to send Francis Drake, who's really good at pirating. I think the Dutch have a pirate, the French have a number that they can send, and the Holy Roman Empire has like 1. So those guys go down here and they start raiding all of these Spanish conquests and colonies. And what that's for is, sure, it's the whole you can take cards and victory points. But the really important thing is there are now these treasure tokens. These little treasure tokens look like this. And at the beginning of each turn, Spain will fill up 5, and Portugal has 3. But they have 5 of these. And if you don't do any piracy against Spain, they get all 5 for free at the end of their turn. And why that's important is all of these little piracy treasure tokens have extra CP that they can spend, or there's a couple of special ones where they can draw an extra card or gain one of those bonus science tokens. So if you let the Spaniards get all of those every turn, it's not that they're going to run away with the game, it's just that it enhances their capacity to do a lot significantly. And why that's important for the Spain is, kind of like the Habsburgs almost, they're spread out, they have a lot that they need to do. So they desperately want to have those so that they can do all the things that they need to do. But it's a neat little extra, again, it's a little extra piece, which I think is fun. It's difficult, it's a little bit more involved than Here I Stand, but it's a nice little extra thing that you have to worry about. And it was enjoyable seeing some of that stuff go off. And, if you don't do anything to them, Spain has all of these little extra chits where they play a card, they play it for the CP and do all their actions, and then they can toss in one of those extra treasures at the end of that card and say, well, I've got an extra anywhere from like 1 to 4 CP, and you can spend that on any actions that you want that you hadn't already done with the CP with your card. So if you did a bunch of building with your card, you can then move and attack with the CP on that little treasure. Again, so you can see the power in that. Or if you play a card for an event, you get a cool event that goes off, and then you can toss in one of these like CP treasures and do some regular actions afterwards. It's really nice, nice bonuses, and it gives you some flexibility and variety in the amount of stuff that the Spanish player can do. Again, because they kind of need it. So I know this is you don't see a lot on here, but that's a lot of some of the new stuff in here. This game is a lot more complicated. Well, I don't say a lot more, but it's more complicated than Here I Stand, but that's some of the new stuff in here. But the core of it's, managing the number of hand cards that you have, moving your stacks around, trying to take border keys, trying to keep those secured, trying to affect the religious conflict so that you benefit the most, but you don't help someone else as much as you might need to, and then doing your faction's special thing. For the Holy Roman Empire, it's gambling. For the Spaniards, they're trying to get all those treasures to do a whole lot more stuff. Build the Spanish Armada, which is really expensive. Send it into England. England's trying to balance Elizabeth's marital status. France is trying to marry off all of their courtiers, that kind of stuff. So, all in all, that's kind of some of how the mechanics work. What we'll do is we'll wrap up with some final thoughts. So that was a look at the map. So just give you a bit more idea of what it is that we're talking about. Because big game. It's
lots of
complicated,
stuff,
right?
Yep.
There's a lot of bits and pieces going on in this. There's a lot of moving pieces off map.
Yeah.
Now, and when the game came out, it's a little bit. I want to say old, but
I want to say like 2008.
This is 2012.
Okay.
So
Here I Stand came out like in 07, 08.
Yeah, and they've had multiple
deluxe editions.
Right, that's gone through multiple editions. It's got new rule sets. This is on P500.
Yes.
And I hope that
is the second printing of the deluxe edition of Here I Stand,
yes,
which is different than the first couple versions.
And I presume, which who knows, I don't know. I hope that they address the rule book.
There are some issues with the rule book, yes.
The rule book needs a more thorough index in it.
It also needs to be organized very differently, I think.
Yeah.
But it's organized similarly to Here I Stand.
It is, but
it's the same.
But there's many more rules in this one.
I agree. This has a lot more exceptions.
And as such, between us, we had 3 copies of the rule book.
Yeah.
And it was, we spent some time reading things and where to find, because there's a lot of niche cases and exceptions.
Yeah.
Where those are located is hard to find, because on a play aid, it says do this.
Yeah.
But it's not referenced where that's explained in the rules. You have to fish it out, and that's within a paragraph in some way.
I think that's one comment I made early on. These home boards, it's like just put references to these areas in the rule book. Page 13, page 75, page 22, and then also I think there's a lot of room that they could put a little additional help things that will help out. So I would ask that GMT look at that and maybe redesign these and add some more information and better reference.
Yeah, even if you added an extra bit of space for some of
these can be better.
Easily forgotten rules for your faction.
Yes.
Boom. You could do that, and you were not going to add that much paper to the card.
But the rule book needs a little bit of work. It's understandable, but it needs to be organized better.
Yeah, the rule book's nearly 10 years old now.
Yeah.
And I think since then they've done the update of the Here I Stand rule book, which is much... It's good.
It looks similar to this, though, but it is updated.
Right, but this one, it was frustrating at times trying to find some of the rules. But other than that, I don't know. I had a blast playing it. That's the most important thing.
I don't know what there is to not like about this game. That's probably because we love these card-driven war games, and we love this era. Yeah. It's just really interesting. The card-driven mechanic is absolutely phenomenal.
It is.
It's fun. It's stressful. Causes a lot of choice. Causes a lot of decisions about how you're going to manage that hand. Am I going to hold a couple cards over? And I did that a couple of times, and man, that made a big difference.
But like even the number of cards that you have is something that you have to consider.
Yes.
Regardless of what's in your hand, you're like,
I only have 4 cards.
And I had 4 cards for like 2 turns of this 5-turn game, and I was like, oh, it's just killer.
The most I ever drew was 7. Because I had 2 extra card rewards, and I had held a card over, and I had several keys. So I was like, ooh, I had 7 cards.
Yeah.
That was a lot.
I got out this extra key, and it gave me victory points, but no extra card. I'm like, oh. So I got to get another one to start getting an extra card.
Those extra cards are big.
Because you look at how many cards have I got versus a person who's trying to attack me.
Yep.
If they've got more cards than you, they have the upper hand in both CP points that they can spend on you and the literal number of activations. You're going to do all your stuff. And then after you're done that, then they're going to launch their attack.
Yes.
And stuff like that's mouth-wateringly cool.
Oh, yeah.
But so every decision is so important because it has so many knock-on effects and ramifications for a subsequent turn and what that's going to look like as well.
There were some things that I still need to have another play to understand better. Yeah. The piracy was really hard for me. And I'm not talking about the Ottoman piracy. I'm talking about the piracy.
The global piracy.
Yeah, it was just... I never saw a really huge benefit from it. The way the treasures are used that you get, they're very circumstantial.
But if the Spanish got 5 of them...
Oh, it was
very The 2
tough.
Circumstantial ones at toss, and they got 3 real good ones.
Yeah, there was only once or twice where I actually got a treasure away from him.
And that comes from inexperience, right? Maybe everyone else should have had 1 pirate in there doing it.
Well, and I think the other thing,
once again, commitment, right?
Yeah, but once again, new game, everybody familiar with the rules. A couple of my captains didn't come out when they should have come out. In fact, my best captain, Francis Drake, came out a turn late. I could have used him. I would have had 2 guys down there, and I would have been mopping up.
And like his abilities are amazing.
Oh, he's like +3, and he can
choose which treasure he takes.
Chooses. Oh. So there were things like that I think we made mistakes in the play that would have helped me understand the piracy. I think the other thing that I struggled a little bit with was the decisions about when to attack and where to attack. I felt like in Here I Stand, I had a better idea of that. Here, there were a lot of those tough choices and about how to get to those things. I'd like to now play it again because I think I know where I need to go first.
This map is very different from Here I Stand.
It is very different.
It looks the same. It's got the same countries in it.
It's
got some of the same names in it.
Yeah.
But the way that the things are linked up and the shape of the map and where the zones are and the things that you do, it's very different.
It is.
And as such...
And you can tell it's play tested to move keys around and make them harder to get for one side, a little easier to keep here.
Yeah, and I love that stuff. Like, they've made it, like, it's different. You played England and Here I Stand. You played England in this game.
Very different.
Right?
Very different.
And that's big win points, right?
Yeah.
That's a nice design for as far as
I actually really liked that I've now played England in both.
Yeah.
Because there was a lot of compare and contrast that I was going through, and I was like, it's very, very, very different.
Yeah.
But great. I don't know. I loved it. I've played the Protestants. I've played the Papacy. What other factions have I played? Anyway, this game is great. I had a great time.
Yes.
I really look forward to getting this to the table again. This is going to be one that it's going to be hard to get 6 people together.
Yes, because you have to have 6 people.
Yeah.
And B, you need a lot of time.
12 to 15 hours. If you got new players, you need 12 to 15 hours and maybe a little bit longer.
Well, a game could be shorter if someone gets some of the auto victories.
And we were to that point.
You can't bank on that.
Yeah, an auto victory was where it was at, and this is just going to take a lot of effort and a lot of planning to get to the table. So I think it needs to be understood. You're not going to buy this and in a week be playing it with 5 people. It's going to take some work and some effort.
Having not done it, I think 4-player tournament scenario might be a really good option for a lot of people.
To get it in, yeah.
Like, this is a heavy game, but 4 players, it's going to go much quicker.
Yeah.
And it's only 4 turns, I think. 1, 2, 3, 4. Yep.
Yeah, the tournament scenario. Yeah.
That's the one you can actually, oh gosh, I don't know where you found it. I think it was on Board Game Geek. Mike looked up statistics
about winners and
it was from WBC.
Yep,
it was from the WBC tournament events.
They played like 100 and some odd games, and
it was 200.
200 games.
200 large tournament games of it. So they were all the 4-turn, 4-player scenarios, and it was who wins those and how they win them more often. That was fascinating to look through. But having seen that, I'm like, 4-player might be a really good option for a lot of people who can't get 6 together, and it's shorter, so you might get it in 9 or 10 hours rather than 15.
Part of the length of this game is you have a 10-minute negotiation session every single turn that turns into 15.
Turns into 20 because you're yapping before and after.
If you could cut that out, I think you could cut an hour or 2 off the game over the 7 turns. But I don't know. So one other question I want to have, and I know we've been talking for a while. If you have the opportunity to do Here I Stand or this, which one are you doing? I know you already asked me, which one do you really like? Which one are you going to want to play? You and I tomorrow and 4 dudes. What are we going to...
I'm going to play Here I Stand.
Yeah, I think so too.
But that's...
I'd love to give this another try.
But that's a thematic choice only, I think. Because I would love... Because this is new to me, I played it once, I would probably play this because I want to play it again.
I want to learn it and better understand it. This is different enough that it's going to be a learning experience for us.
Yes. And I played Here I Stand 3 or 4 times. I know what I'm doing in that game.
Yeah, generally.
In this one, I played the Holy Roman Empire, and I was like...
What am I
doing? The first turn, I was like, I kind of know what I should do, but I don't have the power to do it. So, what am I actually doing? And I did a lot of really weird stuff that first turn. And it was because I was trying to test out, like, what does this thing do? What does this thing do?
How does this work?
I want to press all the new shiny buttons, and it was fascinating.
Yeah. So one other comment I want to make, and I know we're getting long again. the people that are going to really like this game, I think it's people that enjoy interaction. They enjoy that discussion element. They enjoy that concept of trying to put a plan together, executing that plan, while trying to dabble in this area and that area. You got to keep a focus, but you can't ignore that stuff. I probably gained 6 or 7 victory points from, artists and scientists and other things, and you can't not get that. Yes. So it's a matter of trying to understand how to focus on the game, but do some different things. I don't know. And then people that love card-driven games, this is a beautiful card-driven game. It's so well executed.
And so, right, there's the intimidation factor of the length and the breadth of this game.
Yes.
What I would suggest, if this is something where you're like, I'm never realistically going to play it, if you're inclined, on Discord, there is a card-driven game play-by-email group.
Yeah, you could do that.
Where there's a vassal log, and you play turns, and you have a Discord server where you're all chatting together in your diplomacy phase. They give you like a day, because it's messaging and texting each other. And I played Here I Stand that way once, and it's a really nice way to do it. It's a slightly different experience, because you're not all in the same room, like, yelling at each other, but like... It's a nice way to play these big games. You play it, you play it over 3 or 4 weeks, and you've played that game. You've done it, and so that there are digital ways to play these things where you can get over that barrier. Is what I that's out there. You can do that. I've done it.
One thing I would say is I would appeal to people: don't write off these kind of games because they're so long. I think they can be learned. I think they can be done. You just got to find 3, 4, 5 people, 6 people that are going to want to get together and put the time into it. And it's a very rewarding experience.
To try the tournament to see
the 4.
how shorter it is with the player count and the turn being compressed. If you can do that in like 6 to 8 hours, that's pretty good.
Yes. I would agree with that.
That compares with some of the medium-length war games that we play, but you get 4 players and it's really cool. Like that's no different from playing a really long campaign game of Fire in the Lake or something like that. So, but all those things aside, I had an amazing time playing this.
Me too.
Good people, good time.
Yeah.
Just such an engrossing game.
Yes.
Some of those dice rolls, even some of the dice rolls where we got on a hot streak. I rolled for one of my patrons. I'd invested a ton in them. I had like an insane amount, and I rolled Snake Eyes. And they took the money and ran, and I got nothing. Yep. Right? And then you roll for your patron, and you roll boxcars
12
immediately afterwards.
On the same dice.
No. We kept mine separate. You picked up new ones.
I picked up new ones, but then we re-rolled those and got another very good result.
The next person rolled and got 12 again.
And we were screaming. It was just
2,
hilarious.
12, and 12. And it was like, the room was gone wild. Yeah. Because we're just happy for each other's insane moments. Yes. Like, it's just a fun stuff.
And that gunpowder rebellion.
Oh my gosh.
Spain putting that on England. Man, he was rolling 15 dice. Yeah. And in the first 5 dice, I think he got 3 or 4 positive, hits.
Yeah.
Where I only got 2 hits, and it's like, he only need 4 hits more than me to have it succeed and really do.
And it would be auto victory.
Yes,
and he would win the game. The game is done because Guy Fawkes runs down there with his flaming torch,
blows it up,
and nukes Parliament.
But then he rolled the next 5. He didn't get any hits.
He was, and it was like you get nothing.
Yeah,
and it was one short of auto victory. Now, the end effect was devastating as well.
Yes,
like he got to do a whole bunch of cool stuff, but it didn't secure the win that way.
And man, everybody was yelling. It was awesome. Just like, it was awesome. Even I was yelling because it was so amazing to see him pull that off and
it was
to get so close.
Roller coaster of emotion in about 20 seconds.
It was great. So that's what this game is about. You're going to have those moments. You're going to have that experience. And that's great. That's why we play these games.
Yeah.
To have fun, to enjoy each other, and to learn history. I learned a lot about this.
Yes.
It was great. I don't know.
And the scenario book has a ton of amazing information.
As they always do.
But this one is broken down by like, in this year, these things happen. And here's why these cards do this. There's really good stuff in the scenario book for that. So it's a nice
does a good job on these.
Yeah, that's a really nice little bit to do in there as well. And there's also sequences of examples of play, how to learn in there as well.
Tanto Monta.
That's coming
out. It's a prequel. It is before Here I Stand. And it is the rise of Isabel and Ferdinand.
And I'm so curious as to what that's going to look like.
Yep. I did an interview with Carlos Navarez Diaz. If you want to read it, go on the written blog. But I'm telling you, there's more coming. And it's exciting. I would love to have all 3 of these games on the table over a weeks-long period. Can you imagine that? Can you imagine that?
Because the rules are so different now. You'd die from one game to another. Your brain would melt and your eyes fall out of your sockets.
But what an experience. What an experience that would be. If you could pull that off,
someone's going to do it.
Someone's going to do it.
Well,
we're going to do it. We're going to do it. Anyway, I love this experience. Had a great time.
Yes.
Learned a lot. Had a good time.
Chucked a bunch of dice, moved a bunch of counters around, yelled at each other in diplomacy phases, lied to each other's faces,
cheated,
utterly screwed each other over.
Yeah, didn't cheat. We didn't cheat, but broke our words, many a time.
Anything that was non-binding was definitely non-binding. Well, you can never bank on that stuff.
I was England, the Virgin Queen. How many times did I jilt my betrothed?
Twice.
Yeah, and it's just like, finally the 3rd time I'm like, I'm going to let this marriage go through. Because I was hoping we would get some, and we didn't. But that was great. That was really cool to do that, to have that experience. And it was just fun. Just had a great time.
Yeah, this game's got a lot of layers in it. It is crunchy and crispy.
Yes.
But, man, I love thin crust pizza, and this is crunchy just how I like it.
Yes.
So Virgin Queen. This is designed by Ed Beach.
Ed Beach. That guy's...
GMT.
He's got another good game coming out, too. Border Ravers. I'm really excited.
That looks very
totally different game, but I'm interested in it.
But the reprint is on P500.
It is.
So if this... Because you couldn't get this for...
No.
We bought it secondhand.
Yep.
I was actually for one of our patrons. Had it.
Yep, and we bought it.
And we bought it from them, so thank you very much for that.
I think I'm going to get a copy on P500 just because I want it. I want it next to my Here I Stand.
It's a collector's.
I do. I want it.
But yeah,
I'm getting
secondhand, this thing was in the over $100.
Yeah.
So Get on P500. The prices are absolutely insane. So
like $60 or something.
Yeah.
I mean,
if you play it once,
yeah, it's worth it.
Yeah, you
put it on your shelf
for
and
$60. If you break it down by hour, you know, if you're going to be that stingy, you're going to get your money's worth even just playing it once. But you won't, because if you buy this and invest in it, a couple plays and you're like, oh,
agreed.
So
agreed.
Good.
We're getting long-winded.
Yes. So anyway, Virgin Queen GMT games, had a blast with it. Very, 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 very good.
Yes.
Very, very long. But appreciate you guys tuning in. I've been Alexander from theplayersaid.com.
And I'm Grant.